So get this. We're diving deep into the life of Jeff Fort today. This guy's story is wild. Goes from the streets of Chicago all the way to a supermax prison.
Yeah.
We've got a whole bunch of articles, court documents, and they paint a picture of someone who was a powerful gang leader, accused of terrorism and even, well, you'll see. It's complicated to say the least.
Yeah, what strikes me is how Fort's story really reflects some of the biggest changes that happened in America during his lifetime.
Right.
You know, the civil rights movement, the war on drugs, even our relationships with other countries. Like, it'd be easy to just label him a gangster and move on, but I think his life raises some bigger questions about the society that he lived in.
Okay, so let's start unpacking all of this. The sources start with his early life.
Okay.
Born in Mississippi, moved to Chicago as a kid. Pretty familiar story for a lot of families back then. But things change when he ends up in juvenile detention and meets this guy named Eugene Hairston.
Yeah.
That's where the story of the Blackstone Rangers starts, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And, you know, it's crucial to understand the context here. We're talking about Chicago in the late 50s, early 60s.
Right.
Neighborhoods were often segregated.
Yeah.
And for young black men especially, gangs offered a sense of protection and community. They were facing discrimination and very few opportunities.
So the Blackstone Rangers started out as a way to kind of defend themselves, like protecting their territory in the Woodlawn neighborhood.
Exactly. And even as a teenager, Fort showed real leadership skills.
Interesting.
He actually earned the nickname Angel because he was known for settling disputes.
Wow.
Even going so far as to create alliances between rival gangs.
Really?
Yeah. That's pretty remarkable, don't you think? Imagine a teenager successfully negotiating peace treaties between street gangs.
Yeah, that's incredible.
The Rangers grew quickly, became a serious force in the city.
But here's where it gets even more interesting. They weren't just about fighting.
Yeah.
The sources say that the Rangers were involved in community activism. They even received support from a Presbyterian minister, Rev John Fry. Seems like he saw a different side to these young men.
That's right. Fry saw potential in the Rangers, believed they could actually become a positive influence in their community, help them work within the system.
Wow.
And unbelievably, they received a $1 million federal grant for job skills training.
What?
Think about that. A street gang receiving $1 million from the government.
$1 million?
Yeah.
That's a lot of faith in their ability to change.
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder if things could have gone differently, especially considering what happened later.
Yeah.
This was a time when people were really looking for ways to address social problems. And I guess some people saw the Rangers as a potential solution.
Absolutely. It really raises questions about the impact that Grant might have had.
Yeah.
What if things had gone differently? And then there's this incredible detail about Fort being invited to President Nixon's 1969 inauguration ball.
He declined, right? I read he sent some of his top guys instead.
Yes, he did. Now, was that a calculated move? A way of distancing himself from the establishment, or just a reflection of his priorities at the time?
Yeah.
It's hard to say for sure, but it definitely adds another layer of complexity to the story.
Yeah.
You have this young man rising to power during a time of immense social change,
Right.
caught between this world of community activism and this descent into a criminal enterprise, and we're just getting started.
Okay, so we've got the Blackstone Rangers as a major force in Chicago with Jeff Fort at the helm. But things are about to change dramatically, right? I mean, this $1 million grant, all the attention, probably put a huge target on their backs.
Yes, and another major shift comes in 1966 when Eugene Hairston, the original leader of the Rangers, is imprisoned. This becomes a crucial turning point.
Oh.
Fort takes complete control and renames the gang the Almighty Black Pea Stone Nation.
Okay.
And that's when a new and much darker chapter begins.
So with Hairston out of the picture, Fort takes the reins and the Black Pea Stones enter a new era. But it seems like this was a turning point towards more serious criminal activity. What was behind that shift?
Well, it's a complex issue.
Yeah.
But it seems that the allure of power and money, combined with increasing pressure from law enforcement, kind of pushed the Black Pea Stones further into the criminal underworld.
Right.
We see a move towards more organized crime robberies, extortion, control of the illegal drug and sex trades in the South Side.
Yeah.
It's a pattern we've seen with other gangs where the desire for control and wealth often leads down a dangerous path.
Yeah.
But Fort's story is even more complicated than that, especially when you consider that $1 million grant they received.
Yeah, that's a fascinating piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
What happened with that money? Did the government just turn a blind eye, or was there some kind of accountability?
There was definitely accountability, and it came back to haunt Fort.
Huh.
An investigation was launched into the use of those funds.
Okay.
And Fort was summoned to testify before a Senate committee. And here's where we see that defiant streak in Fort again.
Right.
He basically introduced himself and walked out of the hearing.
Wow.
He was later found guilty of contempt of Congress.
So,
It almost seems like a deliberate act of rebellion,
yeah.
a refusal to play by the rules of a system he felt had failed him and his community.
It's almost like he was trying to make a statement, showing that he wouldn't be controlled by the same forces that, in his view, had oppressed his community for so long.
Yeah.
It's a powerful image, him walking out of that Senate committee.
It really is. And then, while he was serving time in Leavenworth Penitentiary, another significant event happens. Fort converts to Islam and takes the name Prince Malik.
Okay.
This is a major shift,
Right.
and it has left people wondering about his motivations.
Was it a genuine spiritual awakening, or was there something more strategic going on?
That's a question that's still debated today.
Yeah.
Some people believe it was a sincere spiritual transformation,
Right.
while others see it as a calculated move, maybe to gain influence within the prison system, or as a way to protect his operations from law enforcement scrutiny.
Right.
It's also worth noting that this was a time when interest in Islam was growing among African Americans.
Right.
So Fort's conversion might have been a way to connect with that movement and expand his base of support.
It's interesting how religion played such a complex role in his life.
Yeah.
On one hand, he had the support of Reverend Fry in the early days, and then later, he embraces Islam and uses it to shape his own movement.
Exactly.
Wow.
Religion seems to have been both a source of guidance and a tool for Fort.
Right.
And it's hard to disentangle those two aspects.
Yeah.
But one thing is certain.
But
his leadership within the gang continued even from behind bars.
So Fort is leading this increasingly powerful and organized criminal enterprise,
Yeah.
all while navigating the complexities of his newfound faith.
Right.
And all of this happens before the 1970s even hit.
Yeah.
But I know the story takes an even more intense turn as we move into that decade.
Right.
What happens next?
You're right. Things escalate quickly in the 1970s.
Yeah.
Ford is released from prison and relocates to Milwaukee for a while.
Okay.
During that time, he becomes involved with the Moorish Science Temple.
Interesting.
And upon his return to Chicago in 1978, he completely rebrands the Black Peace Stones,
Wow.
changing the name to the El Rukn tribe of the Moorish Science Temple.
Okay.
El Rukn meaning the pillar in Arabic.
Another name change.
Yay.
Another transformation. It seems like Fort was constantly adapting, almost like a chameleon changing colors to fit his surroundings.
Yeah.
What was behind this particular shift?
It's difficult to say for sure,
Okay.
but some experts speculate that adopting this new religious identity was a tactic to avoid law enforcement surveillance.
Oh.
The FBI had been keeping a very close eye on the Black Peace Stones for years,
Right.
and this move might have been a way to operate under the radar, claiming religious freedom as a shield for their activities.
Yeah.
It was a clever strategy if that was indeed the intention.
It makes sense. And I know that the El Rukn weren't just about street crime anymore.
Right.
Their operations became much more elaborate, right?
Yes, they did. The El Rukn were heavily involved in drug trafficking, especially heroin and cocaine.
Oh, for
They moved beyond the streets and established connections with international cartels, becoming a major player in the drug trade.
Wow.
What's even more remarkable is that even when Fort was incarcerated on drug charges in the early 1980s,
Okay.
he continued to run the El Rukn from prison.
He was essentially running a criminal empire from behind bars.
Yes.
How is that even possible?
Through a combination of loyal lieutenants and a seemingly endless stream of phone calls,
Wow.
Fort had an incredible ability to inspire loyalty and obedience.
Yeah?
He was charismatic, a gifted speaker, but he was also ruthless in dealing with anyone who betrayed him.
It's both fascinating and terrifying to think about him wielding that much power from within a prison cell.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there are the allegations of terrorism, which take this story to a whole other level.
Yes. That's when things take a truly shocking turn.
Right.
In the mid-1980s, while Fort was serving time in Texas, the FBI uncovered a plot involving the El Rukn and the Libyan government.
Wait, Libya. As in Muammar Gaddafi's Libya. This is where it starts to feel like something out of a spy thriller.
You're telling me It seems that Fort, through various intermediaries, had actually struck a deal with Libyan officials.
What?
The El Rupt would carry out terrorist attacks on U.S. soil in exchange for money and weapons.
Wow.
It was a shocking revelation, and it sent shockwaves through the country.
What kind of attacks were they planning?
The details are still classified,
Okay.
but the FBI believes they were considering targets like government buildings, airports, maybe even the White House. This was during the height of the Cold War, remember?
Right.
A time of extreme tension between the U.S. and Libya.
So Fort went from a street tough to an alleged international terrorist mastermind. It's almost too incredible to believe. What happened next? Did the FBI stop them?
They did. The FBI was able to foil the plot, but it was a major scandal.
Yeah.
Fort and several of his top lieutenants were arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit terrorism.
And this is where it all comes crashing down, right? The convictions, the lengthy sentences, a life spent behind bars.
Yeah.
That's a tragic end to a story that started with so much potential.
Yes, it's a cautionary tale about the allure of power, the seductive nature of violence, and the devastating consequences of choosing a dark path. Fort was convicted in 1987 and sentenced to 80 years in prison for his role in the Libyan plot.
Wow.
Which was added to his existing drug trafficking sentence.
Yeah.
A few years later, he was convicted of ordering the 1981 murder of a rival gang leader and given another 75 years.
Oh my God.
Essentially a life sentence.
The angel, who once mediated peace on the streets of Chicago, ends up as one of the most notorious criminals in American history.
Yeah.
It's a stark contrast, a reminder that even those who start with good intentions can be consumed by ambition and the pursuit of power.
Right.
But there's one more twist to this story, isn't there? Something about Fort's daughter.
Yeah.
She chose a very different path, didn't she?
You're right. There's one final twist that adds a glimmer of hope to this otherwise tragic story.
Okay.
Amina Matthews, Fort's daughter, became a prominent anti-violence activist in Chicago.
Wow.
Dedicating her life to steering young people away from the same life her father led.
Really?
It's an incredible act of defiance, a rejection of her father's legacy, and a testament to the human capacity for change.
It's incredible to think that while Jeff Fort was serving multiple life sentences in one of the most secure prisons in the world, his own daughter was out there actively working to dismantle the very system he helped create. Talk about a powerful rejection of a parent's legacy.
It really is. It makes you think about the complexities of family, the impact of upbringing, and the choices we make despite our past. Amina Matthews saw firsthand the destruction caused by her father's choices and decided to dedicate her life to creating a different path for herself and for other young people at risk of falling into the same cycle of violence.
She was even featured in that award-winning documentary, The Interrupters. Right? That film had such a profound impact on me, showing the real-life struggles and triumphs of people trying to break free from the grip of gang culture.
Yes, she was one of the central figures in that film. It showcased the work of these incredibly brave individuals who put themselves in harm's way to mediate gang conflicts, trying to prevent violence before it erupts. They step into situations that most of us would run from, and they do it with compassion and a deep understanding of the forces that drive young people towards gangs.
It's such a stark contrast to the world Jeff Fort inhabited, a world of violence and retribution. It's almost Shakespearean, this idea of redemption through a child defying the sins of the father.
It certainly adds another layer to this already multifaceted story, and it raises an important question. How much of Jeff Fort's path was determined by his circumstances? He grew up in poverty, experienced racism and discrimination, and had limited opportunities. Did society fail him in some way, pushing him toward a life of crime? Or was it ultimately a series of choices he made that led him down this destructive path?
That's a really tough question. It's easy to condemn someone for their actions, but can we truly separate the individual from the environment that shaped them? I mean, how much free will do we really have when we're constantly battling against systems that seem designed to hold us back?
It's a question that philosophers have been grappling with for centuries, and there are no easy answers. But it's a question worth pondering as we try to understand the complexities of crime punishment and the possibility of rehabilitation. Jeff Fort's story challenges us to look beyond the surface and consider the deeper societal forces that contribute to the cycles of violence and poverty.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the life of Jeff Fort, I'm struck by the twists and turns, the contradictions, and the sheer magnitude of his story. It's a story that could fill volumes, and we've only scratched the surface. We've explored his rise to power, his transformation from community activist to alleged terrorist, and the surprising turn towards redemption through his daughter's work.
And that's the beauty of these deep dives, isn't it? We've uncovered fascinating details, raised new questions, and hopefully sparked a desire in you to explore further on your own. Jeff Fort's life offers a glimpse into a turbulent period of American history and forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our society.
Exactly. If you're intrigued by what you've heard today, I highly recommend checking out The Interrupters. It offers a powerful and moving look into the work of Amina Matthews and others like her who are trying to break the cycle of violence and offer young people a path toward hope and healing.
And as you watch it, or as you continue to explore this topic, consider these questions. What choices would you have made if you were in Jeff Fort's shoes? How much of our destiny is shaped by circumstances beyond our control, and how much is determined by the choices we make?
Those are powerful questions to reflect on, and they're the kind of questions that stay with you long after the deep dive is over. And that's what makes this journey so rewarding. We've gone beyond the headlines and delved into the complexities of a life filled with both darkness and light.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. There's a whole world of fascinating stories out there waiting to be discovered.